Welcome to Offsite Dirt, the podcast committed to news and insight in the offsite construction industry. Join our team of experts covering modern methods of construction, high-performance build, lean manufacturing, prefab, and beyond. We would like to thank our partner, Wesco, for being our official Offsite Dirt sponsor.
We provide innovative supply chain solutions every hour, every day, all around the globe. Our people roll up their sleeves and help create a world you can depend on. Focusing on the details, the challenges, and the unexpected, so that you can live life uninterrupted. Wesco. Ingenuity delivered.
Welcome back to another episode of the Offsite Dirt new construction series, and the most wonderful opportunity has arisen. I get to come back into full circle meeting Nate Peterson of Vederra. Nate and I have a little bit of a history. I actually, probably about 6-7 years ago, I was building modular homes, and he was the manufacturer of those homes, the actual builder, and it was just a crazy experience. We worked
Yeah.
together in Colorado and in Keystone. So Nate, welcome. I'm excited to have this
you.
conversation with you.
I agree. It's kind of fun to find ourselves in a different arena 6-7 years later. So thanks for
Oh
having
my
me.
gosh, you are always such a go-getter. You've always sustained and helped the modular community. For those that don't know you, he comes from this amazing foundation of not only being this amazing entrepreneur, but really digging in deep when when you're talking about customer service, leading the edge of manufacturing with different manufacturers from, I think it was Champion. You also were working with Heritage at the time when we were working together. So you represent a lot of different brands, and now you're moving into your own facility. So can you just give us, and for those that don't know you, a little bit more background, Nate, and let's just kind of start there, and then we'll kind of
Sure.
walk a little bit more into modular housing and the use of affordable housing and get that going on.
Yeah, so it's been a long time. I think I started in modular housing in Colorado in 2005. So I'm coming up on 20 years, which is, gosh, makes me feel old. And started out at least a little young. So, whatever, I'm 46, so I'm getting there. But, started out in modular housing, and in Colorado, when I started, there were 5 factories here. We had, Champion was actually in Colorado at the time, and so was BonnaVilla and All American and Wardcraft and all these other manufacturers, and then they all went out of business during that 2009-10 downturn. And we continued on buying from, like you said, all these different manufacturers that were kind of surrounding Colorado. And over the years, just had to deal with that. And we spent about 10 years in Colorado without a factory here, from about 2012 on, and until about 2 years ago when Fading West opened up in Buena Vista. Good friends of mine, and really trying to get the state kind of up to speed on housing options. In Colorado, we have about 1.8% market share in Colorado for modular housing. Nationally, it's 3 to 4%. And so Colorado's behind. And, up until 2-3 years ago, Colorado imported, I think it was like 93% of the modular housing that came into Colorado came in from out-of-state factories. Well, this, they cost a lot to ship these things, right? And so plus all the jobs that come along with them and things like that. And so we got to the point where we really kind of started to work with the state as an industry to kind of provide some resources to reestablish the manufacturing of housing in Colorado, with a state that has such a big affordable housing challenge and crisis, if you will. It was important to give that community trying to solve those problems more resources. And so we worked with the state as an industry and came up with some, resources for funding factories and things like that. And we ended up putting a group together and applying and getting an award from the state to put together a modular factory in Denver. And so we're full steam ahead with that. Equipment's on order, moving towards beginning production at the beginning of the year in January.
Yay! It's so
Yeah.
great. Hooray. You've really walked us through a lot. And as we are aware, we're constantly in education. We're constantly explaining things. And I think you made a good
Yeah.
point of really talking with legislation. And I know you've always been the advocate, Nate, throughout your entire career, because I remember when we were working together, you were going to meetings and you were always showing up. So it is wonderful to see that all of that hard work is now going to benefit so many. So tell us a little bit about Vederra. How was the brainchild? How did that all come together?
Yeah, so obviously having bought from factories for feels like forever, a lot of different ones, have a really good gauge on what factories provide well and what they don't provide well. And certainly spending, years kind of, arguing the finer points of, well, why didn't you complete that? Why didn't you complete that? Because now I have to complete that out in the field, and so over the years, like when you and I worked together, years ago, it's like we've probably built 400 or 500 modular projects in Colorado over the last 20 years, and certainly, know what a good project arrives like and in a challenging project arrives like, from a factory. And so when we started really kind of sitting down designing what Vederra was going to provide, we wanted to solve a lot of those problems. And so Vederra is very committed to designing and building projects that can be completed substantially at the factory instead of kind of pushing out to the field a lot of completion items. We bought from factories over the years, factories that don't install any HVAC, factories that don't install roofing, and just ship you trusses, factories that, won't install, will only install vinyl siding and won't install what you actually want on the project. And so, our design basically is, we'll do EPDM flat roofing at the factory. We will do all electric heat pump uh, heating systems at the factory. We'll mount the condenser on a bracket if you'll let us on the back of the unit. So you don't actually have to have an HVAC tech out at all once you get out on site. And so it's really trying to work with customers to design projects that can be completed quickly. I've probably said this to you 7 years ago. If you're going to build a modular project and you're going to introduce to it a bunch of stick-built schedule items because you don't complete them at the factory, I don't know why you're building modular, because all of a sudden you just introduce that traditional schedule to a modular project. And so for us, it's trying to really make sure that the projects and the customers we're working with understand that. There's a lot of education. Remember I said 1.8%? What that means is that there's 1.8% of people in Colorado that actually have a gauge on how a modular project goes together. And so there's just a lot of education that has to happen. You hear these nightmare stories of, a bad modular project and, oh, that took them, 18 months to complete it and all these things. And if you go really dissect that project, a lot of times it's, well, look at all the stuff they had to complete on site and all the challenging architectural elements that were incorporated into this thing, that really made it a challenge. And so we're trying to kind of change that trend.
We were talking about architectural guidelines, lessons learned out on site, all the manufacturers that you have learned from it, and lessons of, oh, we weren't supposed to do that, or whose scope of work is this? I really think, Nate, having that experience is going to help not only the developer and builder that is going to work with you, but also the conversation of how does the workflow, how does the scope of
Yeah.
work. And so when we're talking about Vederra, you're going to be full volumetric. Are you wood frame? Are you steel frame? Tell us a little bit about those assets.
Yeah, so obviously full volumetric wood frame. My big thing is that I really like LVL rim joists. And over the years, setting hundreds of boxes. I don't like picking up boxes that are 72 feet long that are made out of double or triple 2x12s, and so we'll have LVL rims, web truss floors on the upper floors, so you can complete the plumbing, at the factory. 2x6 walls, R5 on the outside. We'll be able to, Colorado's moving towards a very strong energy code over the course of the next 4 or 5 years. And so we wanted to be able to meet that from day one, just because we know it's coming. And a lot of the out of state manufacturers, I think, will probably struggle, to meet that over time. And so we wanted to make sure that we kind of provided that resource up front. Plus, it provides a lot of subsidies for these affordable housing projects if they can meet all of these hurdles. And so, yeah, so
Do you feel like you're gonna be doing more single family homes? Are you guys gonna start to stay in the multifamily? Are you gonna do all of the above? How many different
yeah,
lines you guys
uh,
have? Give us a little bit more feature about that because I think it's
yeah. So
valuable.
the factory is 140,000 square feet, and we have
Awesome.
we have 21 stations. And most of the product that we're looking at now is, um, I would say, multi-unit is probably how I would say it, meaning we're working with a lot of affordable housing organizations that have projects that, we build single family homes? Yes. Will we build custom single family homes? No. We will build, if they're, building an affordable housing neighborhood and there's 20 or 15 single families that they're putting together for middle income project, we'll absolutely build those. We'll build, right now we're quoting a lot of townhomes, a lot of townhomes that are for sale product, with these organizations with low down payment assistant loans, things like that. And so, you know, and then we're also quoting projects that are light tech projects, which are tax credit projects that are, typically between 60 and 80 units. And so, with a kind of a center corridor, units on both sides, that sort of thing. And so that's kind of the realm that we're playing in right now. Our commitment, our mission is to really support the affordable housing organizations in our state with options for more affordable housing. And so we're not really quoting a ton of market rate stuff right now. We're not limited to affordable housing. If, obviously we need to stay in business and we need to be able to fill up our line. But from a priority standpoint, we're spending 95% of our time right now on, meeting and trying to educate those affordable housing organizations in the state on what modular housing can look like. Because at 1.8% market share, none of them really know. Even worse is, in the affordable housing, we actually have those numbers broken out. We're at 0.06% market share in affordable housing for modular. And so there's just a lot of education, and we're trying to be a resource there, right? So we're publishing our design guidelines, for the architects to be able to understand what our assemblies look like, how, what our ceiling and floor add up to dimensionally, and what all of our energy stuff adds up to. And so we're trying to really present as a resource for, if you're thinking about this, we're just happy to talk to you. And if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, that's okay as well. But certainly wanting to provide a lot of resources for our state to kind of understand what's going on.
Nate, being that you are going to be enterprising in this space, and this is one of the areas a couple of years ago was like the big area in modular was multifamily, and just with the economy and how projects have kind of been delayed or stopped because of funding, it's great to hear that you're going to start opening up this gate because I think it's very, very valuable. In regards to your design and your guidelines, which is huge, especially from your perspective of what's going to be done in the factory, are you guys using any type of technology to design build? Are you guys going to use BIM? Are you going to try to, utilize those other tools to make it effective to see 2D and 3D rendering? What about
So we
that?
use we use bin, and obviously I think the value of that is really, it's something that when you've been in it a long time, you can really think your way around a modular box and a modular build, and that's what 20 years of experience gets you. But educating in working with everyone else to understand what a plumbing chase looks like and how it's coming from the upper floor and it drops into a riser, it's hard to explain that in 2D. And so it really helps us to kind of communicate, I think, for that team, that environment. It helps on the production floor, right? Guys can understand what's going together and how, in space. But it also helps with that team and the contractors, on what, historically, talking to a plumbing contractor is a nightmare before a modular project shows up. They ask you, well, what am I going to have to do? And in your mind, I know I can try to explain it, but they have no idea. And what happens, I always say on plumbing, is it's best if, and you can't do this all the time because you need firm bids for a lot of these affordable housing projects. But from a plumber standpoint, what I would love to do is you try to explain it to them and then say, just come over once we set it. And once you set it, they come over and like, oh, that's not that hard. Now I get it. That's really easy. Well, now with that environment, you can actually have a chance of kind of explaining to that ahead of time. So yeah, so I think that, and then the biggest thing is our design team being given the permission to raise their hand when something that doesn't make sense is being proposed from a design standpoint, because it's going to make the completion out in the field more difficult. And so that's I think a culture that we're trying to have, where we're willing to say something to try to make their end project go better.
Yeah, from my experience, I was a builder of 5 homes. After that, I was like, okay, I can't do this. This is just like
Hard.
so much and so hard. I learned so many things, and I'm so grateful. And I learned a ton from you. And I think the thing that I really liked about working with you and your team, Nate, was you were the individuals that would think out of the box of how do we solve this problem. So just coming from that perspective and what you've seen and what can be done is truly so valuable for people that are going to be able to work with Vederra. I'm so interested in, how do you feel your vision is for Colorado? Do you feel like you're going to start in small little projects? Are you feeling like your goal is to have, the whole factory? Obviously, everybody wants their factory filled, but I also feel like, kind of like even with Fading West and talking to Charlie,
Mhm.
it's steps, right? It's really being
Yeah.
practical about the steps and implementing. And you're also talking about a manufacturing process, which changes thing, assembly changes thing. So what is your feeling about that? Like when you think about your overall vision for next
Yeah. How
year,
do you step
all this
into it?
building, and how do you
Yeah.
step into it? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it, so the award that we got from the state, our total budget to put this thing together is about $8 million. And that's, I don't want to call it a shoestring, but it's not 25-30 million dollars that kind of typically attack one of these projects with. Now, given we don't have to build a building, so there's a big offset there. But the thing I think that's important as we're getting into this, and I've always said that if I ever did this, I wanted to do it at the bottom. Well, kind of
Well,
feel
you
like
got your wish, and here you
got my
go.
wish. And so there's days that I'm like, well, this is what it feels like. Be careful what you wish for. And so because of that, we're starting out very small. Our break even is about 100 boxes a year. Our capacity will be 500 or 600. It's 140,000 square foot, very efficient factory that you
And maybe
can,
even more than that if you get a
you could,
second line.
yeah,
Right?
seconds.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. You can do all sorts of, and so, but,
Yeah.
we're going to turn that knob up later.
Yeah.
We don't have to start with the knob turned up that high, because that's, I think, one, it's a little bit of a challenge in this environment to say, we're going to start out, or we have to build 350 units a year. We don't have to build 350 units a year. And so our goal for 2025 is to, at a minimum, build 150 homes. And then after that, if the orders are there, well, we can scale to it. But we're starting out from we're conservative. Having been in small business for the last 20 years, you don't spend money unless you have it. This isn't a venture capital startup where you're going to pour money into it like a Katera or something like that, and just hope it works. And so we're stepping into it kind of with that mindset of making sure that what we do is done well, and we're not kind of over our skis too much. And so yeah, so right now, project wise, we're looking at a lot of projects that are 20, 40 units. We got some orders from Habitat for Humanity in Roaring Fork to build some townhomes for them. We're hopeful that we can get some orders from Granby, where I'm from, for an affordable housing neighborhood that they're working on as well, and kind of filling in those gaps. We've passed on some projects already. We had some 320 unit apartments, come in Lakewood, and we have to said, we said thanks, but not right now. I want to walk before we run a little bit. And so certainly kind of trying to kind of get those projects lined up. And one thing that's interesting, to give you a little perspective on our state, is so they've provided these resources for people like us. There's a couple of us, that are putting these together. And one of the things that they just came out with a couple days ago and announced was that they're going to provide a bucket of funding for affordable housing projects that are modular, that are built at in-state factories. One of the things they're trying to do, and that number's 24 million bucks, I think, is what they came out and said. And what they're trying to do is, it's not a handout to us. It produces housing for them. But what it does is it makes sure that, their investment into organizations like ours, it makes sure that we have some demand, so that we kind of have this foundational layer of business. That 24 million, Charlie and Eric and I did the numbers, and we kind of came up with that'll support around 300 boxes being built in state. And, that's a pretty good foundational level for us, to be able to work with and then build from there. And so trying to really kind of thread the needle on, starting up from a conservative financial stance, but at the same time being able to support the state, with the needs that they have for affordable housing. And so I think we're approaching it right, but talk to me in 2 years and I'll tell you if we stuck the landing or not. I don't know, but I'll
Well,
just
I know
trust your
in 2
gut and
years,
go.
if
Yeah.
I see in 2 years and you're all gray, then we know that things were a little
Right.
crazy for you, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
You're gonna be fine. You're gonna be
Yeah.
fine. I like your approach, and I like that you're not being overzealous, and you're really being methodical, and you are genuinely taking the steps that needs to be taken in order to have an effective factory. And I love that, Nate. I love that about you, and I
Thank
love
you.
that about your business model that you had before this, the ones that, when we work together. It is fantastic for Colorado for you to be there, because I remember those shipping costs that were coming from Nebraska, and some
Yeah.
companies were shipping from East Coast all the way to West Coast and bringing them in. So the neighboring towns of where you guys are going to be able to reach, and being able to actually ship the same day and actually possibly even setting the same day, will be exciting. Are you guys going to have any other services than just building? Are you going to do general contracting services? Are you going to build teams? Are you going to do set and stitch? How is your factory performing
Yeah.
that?
What are we going to do? And so it's tempting right now to offer the general contracting. Obviously, we've done it for years and certainly know how to, but again, walk before you run. I want to make sure that we're building the right product before we offer, kind of get distracted, with from a general contracting standpoint. We will offer set services. A lot of people, kind of like the idea of, the manufacturer being able to install their own product and kind of take ownership of making sure the adult Legos go together well. And so we will be doing that and structurally tying them together and things like that. But over time, I think we'll probably offer general contracting services. It'll have to be the right project in the right area and things like that as we step into that. But again, walk before you run. And so right now, just really focused on being able to provide a product that what we really want, I'll be completely transparent with you, is I want our first projects to go out and I want them to be like, holy cow, we just wrapped up that modular project and it took 5 months for a big one, or 2 months for a duplex project or whatever that may be, because of all of the thoughtfulness that went into the design and education of the team on how it gets put together. And so right now, like, that's the focus, is making sure that our projects are successful on site, not out of the factory. That's going to need to be a given. Our projects have to be successful out on site. And so that's kind of the focus right now. If we can stick that landing, a lot of people will sign up to build
Well,
modular houses.
I think a lot of people are going to sign up anyway, because really what you bring to the modular factory is so much different than anybody else out there. There's not too many factories that actually has a foundation of actually building, working with other manufacturers, also doing set and stitch and doing all those pieces, and now coming out and being able to build a factory to also educate and take care of those people. I felt like a lot of the times when I had my experience, it was kind of like, here's the builder, here you go, good luck. I hope it
Have fun.
works out
Yeah.
for you. Don't call us, right? Don't call us
Don't
anymore.
call
We're
us.
good. You got your project. So I feel very confident in what you're going to be creating for Vederra. And you guys are going to be located in Aurora,
Aurora.
Colorado.
Yep. We're out, kind of out by DIA-ish, we're one exit past Pena Boulevard, if you remember that. And so, yeah, so it's in an area where it's kind of the industrial center of,
Perfect.
but it's by Commerce City, and it's kind of the industrial center of Colorado. And so we're really locating there more from a workforce standpoint than anything. And obviously having good access from a supply chain standpoint is important as well. And so I think we kind of check those boxes well there. And, the state and the city and everybody out there has been very supportive, as we were, kind of putting together all the pieces, and it's just kind of been fun to see honestly, I look at it as, we're a steward of some funds that the state gave us, and we're going to have to, spend them wisely, respect them. And so we're out there, going to auctions, buying used cantilever racks for storage and buying used Toyota forklifts at the auctions, and, really trying to make sure that we can put this together. Because if you can put it together more affordably, that also lowers your cost to all these organizations that'll be, will be supplying. And so we're just trying to do the right thing there.
Well, you're proving a whole different part of this industry, because when we look at new factories, like you were saying, it's 25, 30 million. Then we're looking at factories that are doing, $750 million, like all this money that's flying around. And then yet it also seems like that money also contracts them. It's almost like they can't figure out how to take those next steps. So being on a budget, really figuring out those fine-tune elements, and then also getting support from the state. And like you were saying, being a steward and really looking at from a wide lens instead of this small lens about what we're going to do and how we're going to hold on to it, I think is really valuable for our industry.
Yeah, I do. I think if we can figure out how to do this, it's very scalable from the standpoint
You're
of,
not going to kind of
yeah,
figure it out. You got to figure it out, Nate. I
yeah.
feel like you got
I
to have
hope
it
so. I hope
figured.
so. Yes. I appreciate your
Well,
confidence.
we
Right.
are very excited. I'm so happy that we finally were able to connect. You are a busy man. I wish you great success. Vederra Modular, Nate Peterson, he is truly going to be a game changer for all of us to learn and to also know how a modular factory really can perform at the greatest level. So thank you, Nate, for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Audrey.
And that's the Dirt on Offsite Dirt. Our offsite construction series continues the last Tuesday of every month. Make sure to check in with us, and maybe check out Vederra. Might be your next, if you're especially in Colorado, you got to check them out. Thanks again for being here. Have a great day, and we'll look forward to seeing you again on Offsite Dirt.